Welcome to the WWE Podcast, your number one source for the latest in WWE news and straightforward analysis. Are you ready to get this thing going?
Give me a hell yeah! I said give me a hell yeah!
Then let's get this show started right now.
All right, guys and girls, welcome back to another edition of the SmackDown Review right here on the WWE Podcast Network. As always, I'm your host, Michael Ritter. You can find me on Twitter at Michael5Ritter and on Instagram at MichaelRitter5. And today we're going to be talking about the SmackDown that aired on February 26th, 2021. As far as the episode itself goes, I really feel like it was a pretty average episode of SmackDown. In my opinion, of course, just by SmackDown standards here recently, they've definitely put on some pretty good shows. I don't feel like this one was necessarily great. It wasn't bad by any means. It kind of just, was right there in the middle there. We got Bianca Belair choosing her opponent for WrestleMania. We got a pretty good main event, as well as a little bit of other things. SmackDown continued to utilize their male roster. I noticed that. That's one thing that they are doing pretty well. So I want to make sure to give them a little bit of credit there and point out that they are doing a good job. I wish I could say the same about the women, but it's a little bit different. It's probably like comparing apples to oranges in that regard. But before I get too far in today's episode, I do want to thank you guys again for choosing to listen to this episode, choosing to listen to this podcast. If you're a first-time listener, thank you for choosing this. I hope you will continue to do so. If you're a regular listener, thank you for making this part of your weekly routine, and I hope that this episode certainly will not disappoint. And before I get too far into SmackDown itself, I do want to comment a little bit about the things that happened this week in WWE, not necessarily a full review, just a few things that kind of caught my eye. Obviously, it being the Elimination Chamber pay-per-view and then Monday Night Raw. There's kind of an elephant in the room that I really haven't gotten to comment on. And as everybody knows by now, The Miz is a WWE champion. So, yeah, that's where we are right there. I actually mentioned that on my predictions last week. And I kind of I didn't take the possibility serious. I clearly said that, it was very unlikely. I honestly kind of threw it out the window as being a legit possibility. So I will say that WWE did catch me off guard, and I'm sure they caught a lot of other people. But, as far as The Miz goes, you guys know, I've told you guys how I feel about him. I might have actually done it whenever I joined Matt for the weekend review that one time. I'm not sure if I mentioned it on this episode, how I feel about The Miz, but, basically, he just doesn't do it for me. He never has. And like I said, I don't want to body shame by any means at all, but when you look at The Miz, he doesn't look like a professional wrestler. And you can say in an argument to that, well, look at Kevin Owens, look at Sami Zayn, look at Daniel Bryan for that matter. Not everybody looks like a meathead, like a gym rat, or just has that default wrestler body, that huge muscle head. You guys know what I'm talking about, but I guess my argument or pushback that I would say to that would be when you look at Sami Zayn, when you look at Kevin Owens, they all have a skill set and a wrestling ability that they bring to the table that's, better than average. It's good. It's better than good when you talk about those two. And even Daniel Bryan, that's just out of this world. The Miz doesn't bring that to the table. When it comes to wrestling, you cannot tell me, you might be able to in your personal opinion, because it's all subjective, of course, but The Miz has never put on a match, in my opinion, that is even, memorable. I can't think of many matches that The Miz has been in where I've been like, oh my gosh, that was such a good match. I'm so glad that I watched that. And I know there's Miz fans out there, and I'm really not trying to, just completely crap all over The Miz and him being the WWE champion, but just speaking objectively here, that's not the right thing to do. The only positive I can say is that you finally got the briefcase off of him, so you don't really have to worry about that, having that in the back of your head anymore. And this basically gives Bobby Lashley an opportunity to take the championship off of The Miz. That way he goes into the WrestleMania as a champion. Drew McIntyre goes in there looking for retribution to get a little bit of revenge on Bobby Lashley for ultimately being the reason why he lost the WWE Championship in the first place. So you can expect to see hopefully a one-on-one. I really don't want to see a triple threat. There's no reason for The Miz to be in there. I know that people have kind of talked about how many people that actually have a possibility of being in this championship match. I don't think that there's really any reason for that. You have Bobby Lashley, you have Drew McIntyre. There's really no reason to add any more guys. Those two right there are alone, or those two alone are box office. That's WrestleMania worthy on one of the two nights. That match is going to be one of the matches of the night, just because when you look at the size, I mean, I know that they've gone at it, but when you look at the size, the last time we see these guys, Bobby Lashley isn't the Bobby Lashley we see now. And you can argue that Drew McIntyre isn't the Drew McIntyre we've seen now. He's still, I mean, he's not champion. He was champion then, so the roles will be reversed. That already is going to be a little bit different. And I just think that whenever you have a program with somebody in the past and it's the first time you work together, it's not necessarily guaranteed to be hit right out of the park or just do a great job by both wrestlers' standards. So I could see Lashley and Drew McIntyre really knocking this one out of the park, especially being at WrestleMania season. I really hope that's what happens, but that's on Raw. This is the SmackDown review, so we're going to get right to that. But before we do, I do want to remind you guys at the end of this episode, like I mentioned last week, we're going to have the top 5 current wrestler theme songs. So I already did one in the past for the Ruthless Aggression era theme songs. I'm going to keep it a little bit more modern this week and give you guys my top 5 current wrestler theme songs. So that'll be at the end of the episode if you want a little bit of bonus content. And if you are here strictly for the SmackDown review, well, here we go. We're going to get right into that right now. And this week's episode of SmackDown started how most episodes of SmackDown have been starting in recent memory, and that's with Roman Reigns coming to the ring with Paul Heyman and Jey Uso. And this one starts with Roman Reigns basically saying that SmackDown needs him, and he said the same could be said about Elimination Chamber this past Sunday. He begins to pat himself on the back for smashing, in his words, Daniel Bryan after he won the Elimination Chamber match, and he says that his night was almost perfect until it was ruined by one man, and that man is Edge. He feels disrespected that Edge speared him on his show, on his night, and Roman basically tells Edge that he made a mistake by picking him, and that he doesn't want this. Edge being the one who doesn't want this, and a man like him doesn't stand a chance against a guy like Roman. After that, Daniel Bryan comes out and criticizes Roman for bragging about defending his championship against an already beaten man. He calls it cowardly to demand the title match to be started immediately following the Chamber. And then Daniel Bryan starts to play a little bit of mind games with Roman Reigns by saying that he thought it was weird that Roman Reigns chose to defend the Universal Championship in the second match of the night instead of the main event, given that he's the head of the table, the big dog, all that stuff. And then he challenges Roman Reigns to a match for the Universal Championship one last time at Fastlane until he's basically immediately interrupted by Jey Uso, who tells him to get to the back of the line, and if he wants another shot at Roman, then he has to go through him. And one thing I noticed as I was watching this is I kind of got a little bit of flashbacks, and of course you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't they do something pretty similar to this with maybe Kevin Owens? Or it might not have been Kevin Owens, it might have been somebody else, but the whole, them getting in Roman Reigns' face and Jey Uso kind of stepping up and saying, no, you got to go through me. And I get it. That might be kind of the area or the direction that they're going with Jey Uso. But, I mean, even in that night, whenever it happened with, I want to say it was Kevin Owens, he went up to Roman Reigns later in the episode and he apologized to him. And he did the exact same thing tonight. So it's just something I kind of noticed. I don't want to make a big deal out of it because, I mean, that's something that I kind of mentioned about the whole Billy Kay angle that they're doing, is that I didn't want to see it get repetitive. And I certainly do not want to see that happen here with the Roman Reigns program, or I guess just the way that they're using Jey Uso. I don't want them to feel like they're running out of ways, or I don't want them to feel like they have to include Jey Uso, so they're just going to be repetitive with the things that he does. I don't feel like he's that important of a part to this, so I don't want them to basically make the whole thing feel repetitive and us get tired of it just so they can include Jey Uso and make him have a part in all this. And that might not be what they're doing. This was kind of the first night that I even noticed that, so it could just be a one-off and they have something else planned for us. But it's just something I noticed and I wanted to definitely remind you guys of. But Roman Reigns kind of starts to try to respond to Daniel Bryan, basically saying that it was a coward move and challenging him to the match. But before he could even accept or deny Daniel Bryan's challenge, Jey Uso attacks him and throws him into the barricade outside of the ring. And they kind of walk off. And for now, that's all that we see from Roman Reigns, Paul Heyman, and Jey Uso. But they definitely make an appearance a little bit later in the show. Moving on here a little bit, we get a backstage segment with Edge, Adam Pearce, and Sonya Deville. And Edge says that they need to talk. He thinks it's a little bit weird that Daniel Bryan gets a title match at Fastlane before Edge. And that's, of course, if Daniel Bryan wins. But he says he thinks it's a little bit weird that Daniel Bryan gets a match at Fastlane for the Universal Championship before Edge, even though he was in the same Royal Rumble match that Edge ended up winning. And their excuse is that the match for the number one, or basically Daniel Bryan's opportunity for the Universal Championship against Roman Reigns, the basically win-and-in match that he's going to have with Jey Uso later on tonight, they said that match basically fell in their lap, and Edge should know, like they do, that the Universal Championship is a big attraction. And Edge really doesn't like that response, and he walks away pretty visibly upset. I will say about this little backstage segment here, that was a pretty valid point by Edge. It's a really small thing, but at the same time, it makes him look like he's not an idiot. I mean, he actually pays attention. Most wrestlers, that would just go completely unnoticed. They wouldn't say a word about it. They would just, whatever, I'll get in line. I'll get my match whenever it happens. Edge actually says, no, hold up. This doesn't add up right. What's going on? I demand an answer here. So it's just one of those little things that Edge does that just makes him that level above everybody else, and I really love it. Keeping things backstage, we actually get that apology I was talking about with Roman Reigns and Jey Uso. Jey apologizes for jumping the gun, but he says he was tired of the disrespect towards Roman Reigns. Tell me you guys haven't heard that before. But Roman says there's nothing to apologize for as long as Jey Uso takes care of business later on tonight. And that's where we find out that the match with Daniel Bryan and Jey Uso actually becomes official. If Daniel Bryan wins, he will get a one-on-one match with Roman Reigns at Fastlane. And moving on here, we get Otis and Gable versus the Mysterios. And Gable actually shows a clip of how their match ended last week and what Otis did after the match whenever he gave Rey Mysterio that frog splash. And he said that the reason for them needing to show the replay was to have some Alpha Academy film study. So whatever you want to go with that, that was their excuse. As I was watching this match, though, I was kind of paying a little bit closer attention to Dominic. I like to see how he's progressing every time he steps in the ring. There really wasn't much I could take away from this one. I will say I really do wish that Rey and Dominic would work on that double 619 a little bit. I don't think I've seen them hit it smoothly yet. I just don't know if they've executed it the way it's supposed to be, unless it just can't be done and it's just going to look sloppy like that. But I don't know. Every time I've seen them do it, they kind of just whiff. Dominic doesn't look too comfortable. Maybe it's just the misproportion with how big they are. One guy's like 5'5", the other guy's probably like 5'11". I'm not exactly sure. Their heights are probably way off, so don't quote me on that. But either way, that's just one thing I can take away from this is I want to see them, if they are going to be a tag team, which I think would be cool, especially if they do eventually capture the tag team champions as father and son. I want to see them work a little bit more together and get a little bit more smooth, because right now Dominic is still looking like that green, raw, just not ready for the main roster quite yet wrestler. So we'll see if he can take any more steps forward. Like I said, that's something that I pay attention to anytime he's in the ring, because I am pulling for Dominic as a single star, as just a wrestler himself. I will say, you guys all know with the whole Buddy Murphy, Aaliyah stuff, I was not a fan of that, and that's whenever I was saying get Dominic off my screen. I do not want to see him at all, or the Mysterios for that matter. But if you get him in something that isn't just cringeworthy, then yeah, I'm all for it. Let's see what the kid got. But if he continuously shows that he's not ready to be on the main roster, I don't see what would really be wrong with moving him down to NXT, or just letting him maybe go down to the Performance Center and get a little bit more work before you just throw him to the wolves, so to speak. But up next here, we actually get a pretty good part of SmackDown. One of my favorites, actually. Apollo Crews versus Shinsuke Nakamura. and Apollo Crews cut a pre-match promo, and this was actually his first true heel promo, I feel like, and he really did a great job. He says that people are asking him why he did what he did and how come he's acting different, and he makes sure to let us know that we actually know nothing about him. He says that for far too long he's been the nice guy, and it really hasn't gotten him anywhere, or at least where he feels like he deserves to be and where his family deserves to be. It looks like he's taken a little bit of a page from Roman Reigns' book by referencing his family. And I know other people have done that in the past, but it just seems kind of weird to have two people do it at the same time. But he also references his heritage again. He says that he's not from the hood, he's not from suburbia, he's from Nigeria. He's a true African American. And the three words that Apollo Crews is going to be, I guess, focused on here going forward, or at least what his morals are in life, are wealth, dominance, and power. Those are the three words that he mentioned, and I guess basically what you can attribute this new version of him to and what he is exactly going for. And he goes on by saying that Big E deserved what he got last week, which was the attack with the steel steps, and he begins to speak in a Nigerian accent directly towards Big E through the camera, but Shinsuke Nakamura hears enough and then eventually interrupts him with his entrance music. And before this match gets started, Apollo Crews does attack Shinsuke, so a nice little heel move there. And he keeps that same energy throughout the duration of the match. There was a little bit of a scary spot here, I actually noticed, when Apollo went for a German suplex on Shinsuke, but something went wrong and Nakamura nearly landed on his head. I'm not sure if any of you guys noticed that. They did show a replay, surprisingly, in the match. Usually they don't show that kind of stuff, but it was pretty scary to see. Good thing Shinsuke is a pro's pro, and he was able to roll out of that thing pretty safely. But as the match went on, Shinsuke has Apollo Crews in a bit of a sleeper hold near the corner of the ring, and Apollo has his green and white Nigerian-colored scarf that was kind of hanging on that bar that connects the turnbuckle to the ring post, that wrestlers usually get racked on anytime they're standing there. Well, he has it he has it hanging there where both sides are hanging down. And then he uses the scarf He uses the scarf to gain leverage by grabbing it and basically pulling Shinsuke into the top turnbuckle, and then he picks up the win. One thing I wrote down here is that this is another step further in the evolution of heel Apollo Crews. He actually debuted some new ring gear. I noticed that, and it's a nice touch to his new cultural gimmick, because it is Nigerian themed. It's certainly different. It doesn't really expose how muscular he is, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. We all know how huge he is. I like that they're doing something different. But the continued in-ring heel tactics and cheating to pick up a win is a good way to keep the slow burn going, but also still progressing the character development by having him cut those pre-match promos like the one he just did before the match, and also continuing to make the appropriate tweaks to his character. So far so good here. I'm definitely liking it. We get another I don't know why I was about to say main event. We get another one-on-one match here with Liv Morgan and Tamina. And this match was pretty quick, like ridiculously quick with a sloppy finish. I really didn't like Liv Morgan picking up the loss here at all. I don't really see why Tamina needs to get a clean win. Liv Morgan is clearly more of an asset here. And I'm not biased. I mean, you guys know I like Liv Morgan, but I'm really not trying to be biased here at all. I don't really see what the point was for giving Tamina a win. I mean, as far as interest level, she's like the women's version of Akira Tozawa to me. And again, that's just my personal opinion, but I'm not interested in Tamina at all. She's never really caught my eye on the mic and the ring. I'm not anything personal against her. I don't hope she gets fired or anything like that, but just I don't see why she's beating an upstart talent who I feel like was in a tag team who I was going to put not real money on, but my pick was going to be that the Riot Squad do capture the tag team women's championships at WrestleMania, and this match really doesn't affect that at all. I don't think the loss itself is going to hurt Liv Morgan that much. It just was something that I really didn't understand why. Maybe we'll find out more as the weeks come, but I just really didn't understand why they decided to give Liv Morgan the loss. Ruby Riott was at ringside, Natalya was at ringside, so they each had a person there, but I do think that the match had a clean finish. It was just a little bit of a sloppy one. I don't know. I guess we'll see what happens, but Liv Morgan certainly does not need to be taking any losses here. I feel like her arrow should be pointing all the way up, and she should only be getting more and more hot as we get closer to WrestleMania. And up next, we get the much-awaited decision by Bianca Belair, where she will tell us who it is that she's going to be facing at WrestleMania. And she is met in the ring by Adam Pearce and Sonya Deville, who basically introduce her before she comes out. And as Bianca was about to announce her decision that she admitted she's already made, Reginald comes out to continue his weekly routine of buttering up Sasha Banks for some reason, and he tells Bianca that if she chooses Sasha, her dream will turn into a nightmare and that she will ultimately be a loser. And before Bianca could even respond to that, Sasha's music hits and she comes out to the ring. She reminds Reginald to never speak for her again and tells Bianca that if she wants to be the talk of the industry, then she'll choose her. And she makes sure to let Bianca know that she's number one, and that makes Bianca second best. Bianca makes it official and tells us that she tells Sasha that she'll see her at WrestleMania. There really wasn't a whole lot to take from this. Most people knew that this is who Bianca was going to choose all along. It was just a matter of how and when. I thought maybe it would happen at Elimination Chamber in their tag match. Maybe Sasha would make the official quote-unquote heel turn and maybe get things a little bit juicy going into the program that they're going to have. And I was even expecting maybe a little bit of a cheap shot tonight, but that didn't happen. Even though she didn't, though, I will say this is the most heel I've seen Sasha. And I know that's really not saying much because she hasn't acted like a babyface like ever. But just tonight in particular, I feel like she was saying some direct shots. I mean, that whole I'm number one, that makes you second best right before she's about to make her decision. I mean, Sasha is clearly playing the heel in this whole thing, whether they admit it or not. Just like she kind of made the de facto babyface turn with Bayley, I think they're kind of going to do the de facto heel turn with Sasha. Maybe not make it a big thing, just kind of act like it never happened and just wake up one morning and she's a heel. So it wouldn't surprise me if that's what they do there. I am excited to see this match, though. As of right now, matches that are officially announced, given it's only maybe 2, I will say that the Sasha Banks versus Bianca Belair match at WrestleMania is already higher on my list than Edge versus Roman, Drew versus Lashley, any of those other matches. I am looking forward to this one a lot. So moving on here, we get a little bit of a backstage segment with Baron Corbin and Sami Zayn, and they actually tease a little bit of a possibility of them two having a little bit of a tag team. And I wouldn't be opposed to that. Corbin actually admits that the two could win the championships as a tag team and possibly run the entire division, although he does still have a little bit of resentment because of the whole documentary crew and just who Sami Zayn is as a person. I don't really think him and Corbin necessarily mesh as a tag team, although the success they could have really, is pretty obvious. But we do get that tag team match next, Sami Zayn and Baron Corbin versus the Street Profits. And I actually thought Sami Zayn was pretty funny in this match. He didn't really get any mic time, but just as he was standing on the apron, he was kind of pointing to the documentary crew that the referee wasn't officiating properly. Just things that he's done, but I don't know. Today, for some reason, it was just making me laugh a little bit. But as you would expect, the documentary crew gets in Baron Corbin's way, so they don't necessarily help the case for his hesitation to join a tag team that Sami Zayn apparently really wants to do. I mean, he was pitching for it during that backstage segment pretty bad. So maybe he does want to be a tag team with Baron Corbin. But Corbin really just isn't having it because of this documentary crew. And they eventually bother him enough to the point where Corbin pushes one of them down during the match. And that distraction caused Montez Ford to have one of his dives outside the ring, but this one was pretty beautiful. He dove right over Sami Zayn as he was kind of talking to Corbin as he pushed down one of his documentary crew members. And then Angelo Dawkins put Sami Zayn on his back inside of the ring just in time for Montez Ford to hit the splash from the heavens and pick up a win for the Street Profits as they try to work their way back to being the number one contenders in the SmackDown Tag Team division, which isn't very packed, so it should only take 1 or 2 wins to maybe get a little bit of quote-unquote momentum, and then ultimately get themselves back in the tag team picture. They did show Ziggler and Rude watching backstage, so just to keep it in the back of our minds that they are still very much involved in this tag team championship picture. Moving on here, we get a backstage interview with Kayla Braxton and Daniel Bryan. And I really didn't hear the exact question that she asked him, but long story short, Daniel Bryan says that he thinks that he has a better shot of beating Roman Reigns than Edge does. And he says that Edge has been gone a really long time, and despite winning the Royal Rumble, he doesn't know if Edge has what it takes to beat Roman Reigns. And like you would expect, or, the absolute worst possible thing that could have happened in that situation is Edge walk up, and that's exactly what happens. Edge walks up and makes the entire interview awkward as he heard every word that Daniel Bryan just said. So Edge starts to kind of play the hypothetical game here. He says that if Edge beats Jay tonight, according to him, he would beat Roman Reigns at Fastlane, which would mean it would be Edge versus Daniel Bryan at WrestleMania, which leads Edge to ask who wins that match. But Daniel Bryan chooses not to answer and says that he'll keep that one to himself. I will say, I hope that this is, like I said last week, that major foreshadowing I was talking about. I hope that this is exactly that. I really, really want to see Daniel Bryan versus Edge in an actual program before they both hang it up again, which is obviously going to be sooner rather than later. Neither one of the guys got too much tread left on the tires. They're both still active right now. I don't see why you can't make this happen. So I do think it's going to at some point, and you could definitely sign me up whenever that happens. A little bit of a segue here. Another match you can certainly sign me up for whenever it happens is Seth Rollins versus Cesaro. And we do find out a little bit more about that right now. Seth Rollins teases that he has some pretty incredible news to tell everybody. The good news was that the letter they sent to WWE management last week got a huge response on all social media platforms. But literally, that's the last word he gets out. He talks for maybe, I don't even know, probably like 20 or 30 seconds, and then bam, immediately interrupted by Cesaro, who comes out dressed to fight, but not necessarily in ring gear, with a shirt off, regular shoes on, jeans. He's definitely ready to say or do what he said he was going to do, and that's get payback on Seth Rollins for what he did a couple weeks ago. And Seth immediately starts to backpedal on what he said last week. And he says that the only reason why he called Cesaro a loser was because he meant that he was a loser because of his specific situation that he's in. Not necessarily a loser, but you know what he meant. So basically, he butters them up by saying that he's one of the strongest wrestlers pound for pound in WWE history, and he's clearly one of the most technically gifted wrestlers in WWE history. He asks Cesaro why he can never grab that brass ring, but it's pretty much a rhetorical question because Seth Rollins answers his own question by saying that it's because Cesaro doesn't have that killer instinct. And he makes his pitch to Cesaro to follow his lead, similar to how Buddy Murphy was with the Authors of Pain as well. He says that he can help him by giving him that killer instinct that he needs, and all Cesaro needs to do is embrace the vision. And if you're wondering what Cesaro answers what his answer was, I feel like he showed us rather than tell us, because he immediately put Seth Rollins in the spin cycle for about 45 seconds. He went probably for like 15 seconds the first time, and then probably like 25 seconds the second time. I know that math doesn't really work out there, whatever. But he spun him for a pretty long time. It was definitely the longest I've seen in a while. So you can definitely sign me up. I don't care when it is. It's definitely worthy of being at WrestleMania. I could see maybe this specific program right here going to Fastlane, having somewhat of a wacky finish, a DQ, something like that, to where the match itself doesn't end right. They continue on to WrestleMania, and we get a gimmick match, not just a regular singles match, some type of match where either Seth Rollins can escape or weasel his way out of it, something along those lines. They definitely have a lot they can do here, but either way, sign me up, no matter what day it is, no matter when it happens. If you're telling me Seth Rollins and Cesaro are going to have a meaningful program, I will sign up for that 10 times out of 10. And up next, last but not least, we get the main event, Daniel Bryan versus Jey Uso. And we've seen these two go at it probably like 5 or 6 times on SmackDown here in the past, I don't know, for sure since I've been doing this podcast. This is episode number 22 that I've done, by the way, for those of you who are counting. Just kidding. But anyway, we've definitely seen these two go at it before. So there's really not much. It was a long match. It was probably like 15, 20 minutes at least. And ultimately, if you're talking about pure wrestling, just in terms of the actual wrestling, this was definitely match of the night. As you would expect, these two can certainly go. There was a pretty nice butterfly suplex by Daniel Bryan. And then as they kind of work their way to the outside of the ring, the match ends in a double countout with a somewhat of a sloppy, botched stair spot at the end. Jey Uso tries to throw Daniel Bryan into the stairs. It doesn't quite go according to plan. And Daniel Bryan takes advantage of that because he gets Jey Uso in the yes lock until Roman Reigns comes out to the rescue. But that wasn't enough to keep Daniel Bryan down because he almost puts Roman Reigns himself in the yes lock as well until Jey Uso ultimately returns the favor and kicks Daniel Bryan in the head. And then Roman Reigns has a spear and puts Daniel Bryan in the guillotine, and Daniel is left unconscious in the middle of the ring as SmackDown goes off the air. Had Daniel Bryan not ran his mouth about Edge a little bit earlier, he might have had some help here. I was actually still kind of waiting for it just because in their encounter, they still had that mutual respect at the end, you know? So I was a little bit surprised that Edge did not make an appearance at the end, but hey, I mean, he can't come out to the rescue every week, so it is what it is. We kind of just have to accept the fact that Daniel Bryan was left beaten in the ring, and hopefully he'll be coming back for a little bit more, I'm sure. I mean, the match ended in double countout. I'm not sure how Adam Pearce and Sonya Deville are going to handle that next week, what they're going to do. If they decide to hand him another number one contenders match, I don't think Edge is going to appreciate that as well. So things might be getting a little bit sticky in the Universal Championship picture as we head closer to Fastlane. But that should just about do it for the SmackDown review portion of today's episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it. SmackDown itself, like I said, I mean, it was a good episode. It wasn't great, it wasn't bad. It's kind of just right there floating on the average scale, which is good. I mean, not taking any shots on Raw or anything like that, but I mean, everybody seems to be on the same wavelength that SmackDown is just, a better show right now all together. I mean, just from top to bottom. It helps when you don't have The Miz on the show, I will say that. So, but before I get too off topic here and bring The Miz into any of this, I will say that the top 5 current wrestler theme song / entrance music is going to come up right now. And as most of you know, I have done a theme song related top 5 before, so it's nothing too new, but I will say these are probably the most subjective top 5s that I do, just strictly because everybody has a different taste in music. Just because I like a song doesn't mean you're going to like a song and vice versa, so I don't necessarily expect you guys to agree with all of this. It's just basically letting you guys know what my personal top 5 is, and I would certainly love to hear yours, so you can get at me on any of the social media platforms I'll let you guys know about to let me know what your top 5 is. And I don't really have any honorable mentions just because I'm going to play a little bit of each of the songs from the top 5. So I'm really not going to play any honorable mentions, and I'm not really going to go too deep into, why I like the song or anything like that. I mean, like most of you know, when you like a song, you just like a song. You don't really have a reason behind it, but I will certainly let you guys know as they come. So we will start here with number 5. So that was number 5, Seth Rollins. And I will say I've always liked Seth Rollins' theme song ever since I started watching wrestling again and he broke off by himself. And I know whenever they initially broke up from The Shield, him, Dean Ambrose, and Roman Reigns all kind of had their own theme songs, even though Roman's was kind of similar to The Shield song and kind of still is because it hasn't really changed at all. I always like Seth Rollins the most because of the instruments. And not to make this too much like of a music podcast, but that's always just my favorite part of songs is whenever you can hear the different instruments really, jump out. And the drums in Seth Rollins' song have always just jumped out to me. So that's one of my favorite parts about his song, so I had to keep it on there. But moving on here, I will get you guys to number 4. And the reason why I put Alistair at number 4 was because I feel like his song, and I'm not sure if it's actually even still his song, I hope it is, and even if it's not, I really don't care, I would still put it on this list because he's still active, and it was a song literally like a month ago. I mean, we haven't seen him on TV in quite a while, so I don't really know for sure if he would come out on this song, because I do think he had a different one, but I just feel like this song really fits him. As far as like songs fitting wrestlers, it really doesn't get any much more of a better fit. That really didn't make sense. It really doesn't get any better of a fit, I guess you could say, than Aleister Black and his song. I mean, it's kind of like cut from the same cloth as Seth Rollins, just the instruments kind of jump out to it. And like I said, it just really fits him, and it's really catchy too. So I was certainly going to make that one of the top 5. So continuing on here, number 3. I really don't have a specific reason why I put AJ Styles on here other than it's a really good song. It is, I mean, there's really none other like it in the WWE, so it's unique in that regard. And it's just kind of, I mean, from the moment he debuted in the Royal Rumble, whenever I really didn't know who he was at the time. I mean, I knew who AJ Styles was, but whenever he was coming out, I didn't know, okay, that's him, and put it really together. Oh, that's the guy from TNA way back in the day. It really took a little bit for it to click. The first thing that I noticed was this song, and I was like, dude, who is this? This song's freaking awesome. So that's really all I got to say about that. And also, AJ Styles is from Gainesville, Georgia, which is pretty close to Atlanta. He's a noted Atlanta Falcons fan. I don't really know how big. I mean, celebrities really, you can't really take their fandom that serious, so I don't really claim him as a Falcons fan, but he has said before that he is one. So if he really is one, then I will appreciate him in that regard, of course. But moving on here in the top 5, we will get to the top 2 and start here with number 2. And that one really doesn't even need an explanation. You guys all know that's one of the things I really miss about the fans being there, is them being able to kind of sing along with Shinsuke's music as he came out. And I was really disappointed whenever WWE decided to add the lyrics for some reason, whatever reason it was. I think, honestly, I heard that it was to get the fans to stop singing along with Shinsuke's music because they were trying to commit to his heel turn. So they changed his song. Now that they're kind of drifting away from that, they're going back to his normal song, and I could not be more happy. I hope that they stick with it. I mean, it's one of the best songs in the entire wrestling industry, let alone WWE. So I definitely hope that the little switch they pulled was a one-time thing, and they keep it how it is now, because I do feel like it is second to only one song in the WWE, and we're going to get there right now. Number one might be a little bit of a surprise for some people to have Kevin Owens' song there. For some, they might agree with me. But I will say this is seriously one of my favorite songs. Whenever he first debuted on the main roster, because I had no idea what NXT was at the time whenever Kevin Owens showed up and wrestled John Cena. Obviously, the rest was history. But I said immediately, wow, this is a really good song. But Kevin Owens, like I alluded to in many episodes ago, I wasn't really a fan of him at first. It took a while for him to kind of grow on me. But even during all of that, I couldn't deny that he had a really good song. And I truly felt, man, they wasted this badass song on this guy who really isn't that great. Obviously, that was my first opinion on Kevin Owens. I'm never afraid to admit when I'm wrong. So I will say that I was wrong about Kevin Owens, and I couldn't be more glad to be wrong because, I mean, he's definitely over the past 4 or 5 years been a wrestler that I've become a fan of, and it really doesn't have anything to do with his song. But I will say, for those of you that haven't already seen it, the NXT War Games from 2019, I want to say, whenever Kevin Owens was the surprise entrant and the surprise team member of one of the teams. I don't know for sure which one it was, but he made an appearance there. Whenever he came out and the crowd popped and his song was playing, that right there is the moment that put the song over for me. Like, oh my gosh, this song is the best in the WWE right now. And I could be alone in thinking that. But seriously, if you just think about Kevin Owens having the NXT background, him being a surprise entrant, just the fans pop along with his music and the visuals, the thought of it literally gives me chills. And I wasn't even a huge Kevin Owens fan whenever I seen this. So if you go back and you watch the video of the 2019 War Games where Kevin Owens does make the surprise entrant, just listen to his song then, listen to the crowd, and I don't know, that kind of put it over for me, so maybe it will do the same thing to you. But there you have it, guys. That was my top 5 current wrestler theme songs. I got a pretty juicy top 5 for you next week. I don't want to spoil it or because I don't know for sure how I'm going to do it, but I do have a little bit of an idea, so I kind of want to let it play out a little bit and work a little bit on it. But if everything goes according to plan, I should have a pretty juicy top 5 for you, by far the best one yet next week. So I really hope that everything goes like I'm hoping. But with that being said, I should be close to finishing up here, guys. But I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I definitely enjoyed getting to do it for you. I look forward to Friday every week. I look forward to doing the top 5s and hoping that I do one that you guys will enjoy. And like always, I hope you guys will send those suggestions in. Let me know what you guys want to hear, because I want to do what you guys want to hear more so than I want to do what I think is exciting. I mean, it's all about the listeners. So whatever you guys want me to do top 5s wise, just please let me know and I will try to make it happen. It's always fun getting to sit here and talk wrestling with you guys, knowing there's some loyal listeners out there who tune into this and look forward to this every week. I certainly look forward to being the one who gets to provide all of the content to you on a weekly basis. It definitely does not go unappreciated, me getting to do this podcast for you every week. So definitely do not want you guys to ever have to go without a SmackDown review, and I try to make it a quality review at that, so you guys know that you guys are not just going to listen to a bunch of BS, yada yada. But I hope you all have a safe and fantastic weekend. And we're just about finished up with February here. February likes to really fly by. January always seems to drag on, and February seems to fly by. So March is really whenever the months kind of seem to normalize a little bit and kind of the year actually begins, so to speak. So anyways, that should just about do it for me here tonight. I hope that you guys all have a fantastic weekend, and I hope that you guys all have a great week leading up until the next time you hear from me next Friday, which will be, if I'm not mistaken, March 5th, maybe? I think that's what it is. I don't know for sure. I need to look at my calendar. But anyway, guys, with that being said, y'all have a great weekend. I hope y'all have a great week.